In business news tonight, stocks of vegetables were being discarded at the Dambul Economic Centre today as well, as they could not be sold. Our reporter says that about 20,000 kilograms of vegetables have been discarded.
While labourers were discarding stocks of vegetables this morning, our camera also captured footage of piles of vegetables that are to be discarded. Farmers say that vegetables that fetched a high price during the New Year season cannot be sold at present. Traders say that they have an excessive supply of vegetables and that there are insufficient consumers coming to the economic centre. The secretary of the Dambul Economic Centre, I.G. Vijayananda, says that a program should be initiated for farmers so they only cultivate as per the need. When the supply increases and demand reduces and the prices reduce, at the same time, if you leave the vegetables for 4 or 5 days without harvesting them, then the quality reduces. It cannot be sold. A policy should be initiated so the supply matches the demand. This should be done by the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Agrarian Services and the officials at village level. This situation would not arise if there is an economic program in this country to produce what is required. The secretary of the Yapagama Farmers Society in Dambulla, E.A. Nyanasena, says it is the government's responsibility to ensure proper management. What we can do is plant a seed, nurture the plant and then bring the harvest to the market. We are doing this properly. We cannot determine prices after we bring it to the market. The price is determined in accordance with the supply. Managing this is the government's responsibility. News First made inquiries from Mahinda Yapa Bewardena, the Minister for Agriculture, regarding this matter. These farmers' organizations never get organized and decide on how much to cultivate, no matter how much we have told them to do so. For several years now, we have been asking them to get organized in terms of production. 1 or 2 people may incur a loss, but this would prevent all of them from facing a situation like this in the future. The government cannot intervene here. Farmers' societies need to get organized.
Sarath Fonseca, the leader of the Democratic Party, says the country is being dragged into a very dangerous situation. He made this observation at an event held in Gampa yesterday. This event was held to mark the establishment of the first operations office of the Democratic Party in Gampaha. The opposition is weak. The opposition will not become strong. It will not be united. They are keeping silent and saving face. Therefore, we have taken a decision. We will embark on a journey with your strength, with your blessings, bringing forth your aspirations. We will rescue this country from this corrupt system. We will direct the country towards a new path. Nothing is impossible. All we need is your aspiration. The improper disposal of waste has caused social and environmental problems in various parts of the island. On the majority of occasions that News First has reported on such issues, the responsible party has been local government institutions. Our correspondent in Kandy, Dhammika Gunawardena, filed this report. There are great stories about mountains in Sri Lanka. However, the mountain you can see over here has a totally different story. For a number of years now, the Kandy Municipal Council has been disposing of waste on this plot of land in Tekkavatta, which comes under the purview of the Harispattuwa Pradeshiya Sabha. We could only drink this water when we filter the garbage. The sediments remain. When they find a ground conducive for mosquito breeding, they find us. However, there are many dengue mosquitoes here. The Kandy Urban Water Distribution Plant, the Water Purification Plant and Sri Rahula College Katugastota are located not far from this landfill. St. Anthony's College Katugastota and several tourist hotels are located on the opposite bank of the Mahaveli River, 200 meters away from this landfill. If the people make an example of these actions undertaken by local government institutions, will it not simply aggravate the problem? In more local news, Defence Minister of India A.K. Anthony said that 125 Indian fishermen were detained by the Sri Lankan authorities for crossing over into their territory so far this year. According to Indian media reports, Anthony told the Lok Sabha today that the Indian government has been taking up the issue of a tax on Indian fishermen with Sri Lanka and asked Sri Lanka to ensure that its navy acts with restraint and in a humane manner.
He also noted that from time to time there are reports of incidents of alleged attacks on Indian fishermen by the Sri Lankan Navy. To avoid recurrence of such incidents, he said that the Indian government had reached an understanding with the government of Sri Lanka in October 2008 to put in place practical arrangements to deal with bona fide Indian and Sri Lankan fishermen crossing the international maritime boundary line. Anthony added, as per these arrangements, it has been agreed that there would be no firing on Indian fishing vessel and that Indian fishing vessels would not enter the sensitive areas designated by the Sri Lankan government along its coastline.
You're watching Primetime News on MTV Sports. Up next is a look at Action TV. Farmers in the Mahaweli B and C zones have been voicing their protest over the past several days over a decision arrived at by the Sri Lanka Mahaweli Authority to reduce cultivation in the Yala harvest season by 20% because there is no considerable shortage of water around the Madruoya, Ulhitia and Ratkinda reservoir irrigation systems to warrant such a cutback. Last Thursday, Action TV revealed that the spill gates of some of the minor reservoirs in the Mahaweli C zone are still open. However, it is evident that the procedure being followed by the Sri Lanka Mahaweli Authority in supplying water to farmers will result in some farmers having to cut back more than 20% of their cultivation for the Yala season. Although water was released on Saturday in accordance with the decisions arrived at during the harvest meetings for the 23,000-acre Mahaweli C zone and the 16,000-acre Mahaweli B zone, these waterways bear testament to the fact that insufficient water has been released. Although the Pimburattawa reservoir, which receives water from the Madruoya, is now full, water has not been released to the fields. The Pimburattawa reservoir nourishes 700 acres of farmland. There is no water. It is all drying up. The only way that we can continue working in the fields is if we receive water. The Kudaoya waterway, which supplies water to fields in the 503 sub-irrigation zone, should also be filled with water from the Madruoya. The failure to fill the Kudaoya leads to the wilting of 900 acres of paddy fields. When we go and ask the officials who are there now for some water, they release it, and as soon as our backs are turned, they close off the supply. We cannot live off agriculture, and it is difficult to find work as a hired labourer too. Doesn't the failure to provide sufficient water to farmers who are battling not only the elements but a cutback on the fertilizer subsidy as well amount to paving the way for the import of rice? Minister of Agriculture, this one is over to you. Marc Marquez enters the record books as the youngest rider to win a MotoGP race. And Sebastian Vettel consolidates his lead in the F1 standings with a victory in Bahrain.
In more local news, UMP parliamentarian Sajid Premadasa convened a media briefing in Colombo today and expressed the following views.
If
Ranasinghe Premadasa was alive in such an era where the rights of the people are being abused, he would step onto the streets and provide leadership to the people. We have dedicated ourselves to take the ideologies of Ranasinghe Premadasa forward. On the 1st of May, we will mark the 20th death anniversary of Ranasinghe Premadasa. We will simply not restrict our work to this memorial. We will launch 20 large-scale development programs in 20 districts in the country to commemorate his death.
Also in local news tonight, the official in charge of land takeovers in the Jaffna district has issued a statement dated the 27th of April 2013 stating that an area of 6,381 acres and 38.97 perches has been taken over in the Walikamam area in Jaffna for public needs. The officer noted that the identified lands were located in the Walikamam North and Walikamam East Divisional Secretariat areas.
The release issued by the officials in charge of the land takeovers noted that the land acquired in this manner will be used for the headquarters of the Jaffna Military Command and for the creation of high security zones in the Palali and Kankasanture areas. The announcement further notes that the lands are to be taken over as per the instructions of the Ministry of Land and Land Development under Section number 2 of Act number 28 of 1964 pertaining to the takeover of lands for public needs. It notes that the owners of the lands have not been identified as yet. The Media Secretary of the Ministry of Land and Land Development noted that if individuals are capable of confirming their ownership of these lands, the ministry is prepared to provide compensation for them. He added that as per the recommendations of the LLRC report, lands which are absolutely necessary have only been taken over in this manner.
MHM Umar from Waligamba filed this report for the News First Citizen Journalism Initiative. News First, you report.
A fire that erupted at 3:30 p.m. in Waligamba yesterday destroyed a house. It is reported that an electricity leak was the cause of the fire. Firefighters, police and area residents worked in coordination to douse the fire.
MHM Umar Waligamba සිට යු රිපෝටර් වාර්තාකරු.
Welcome back. It's time now for some sports news. And Nadim, I believe you have some interesting news from the women's cricketing field.
That's right, Maina. Well, the Inter-Provincial Women's T20 Cricket Tournament commenced today. Now, the North Central Province and the Joint Provinces teams secured victory in today's matches.
The Central Province and North Central Province women's teams faced off the first match of the day at the Coles Cricket Ground in Colombo. The Central Province team only managed to put on 73 runs in their allotted 20 overs, losing 8 wickets. The North Central Province team reached the target with more than 5 overs to spare, losing just 2 wickets. Victory in the fiercely contested second match was decided by a super over. Both the Joint Provinces and the Western Province teams scored 83 runs in their allotted 20 overs. The game eventually went to a super over, and the Joint Province team that scored 6 runs, one more than their opponents, emerged the winners.
Well, coming in 14th at the London Marathon is no easy task, but this time around a Sri Lankan achieved this feat. Anuradha Indrajit Kure competed alongside 36,000 other competitors from across the globe and came in 14th. Speaking of sports first, after his victory, he shared these views.
It makes me happy to hear that a runner from Sri Lanka is participating. That is why I participated in these games. I have represented the country at 2 Olympic Games and I expect to qualify for another. I will retire thereafter. If you really want to accomplish something, you can achieve it. After the Olympic Games, no one spoke to me. I am happy that News First spoke to me.
Well, that's a look at your primetime news bulletin for tonight. I'm Nadim Majid.
And I'm Mahina Bongzo. But before we wrap up the news tonight, we bring you a Guinness record attempt from Mexico.
That's right, Mahina. Almost 3,000 Mexicans peered at the moon through telescopes over the weekend and broke the Guinness World Record that the country set in 2011.
In total, 2,978 people simultaneously looked through the telescope at the moon from Mexico City and 40 other locations across the country.
We leave you tonight with some compelling footage from Mexico.